I stood there staring at the remote on the floor and I didn't pick it up. Not because I couldn't, I just didn't feel like it. At 94, that scared me more than any diagnosis I've ever heard, because nothing hurt. I wasn't dizzy. I didn't fall. I just stood there thinking, I'll get it later. And that's not how I used to be. My name is Maggie. I live alone in a small house in Toledo, Ohio. I still cook, still drive short distances, still go to church on Sundays. On paper, I'm doing fine. But something had been off for a while. It didn't start with that remote. That was just the moment I noticed it. Before that, it was little things. I'd open the fridge, look inside, and close it without grabbing anything. Not because I wasn't hungry. I just didn't want to decide what to eat. Some days, lunch was a slice of bread. Some days it was leftovers I didn't really want. Some days it was coffee and whatever snack I found first. Nothing dramatic, just easy choices. I told myself it was normal. My doctor even said it was normal. That's just aging, he said. And I believed him. But then I started noticing something else. I wasn't just eating differently. I was moving differently, slower. Not physically slow, just hesitant. I dropped a spoon one morning and left it there longer than I should have. Not because I couldn't pick it up. I just didn't feel like bending down right then. Another day, a piece of mail slid off the table. I walked past it twice before picking it up. Little things, easy to ignore. And the strange part was none of it felt serious enough to worry about, which is exactly why I didn't. I kept telling myself it wasn't a big deal, because nothing in my life looked broken. The house was clean. Bills were paid. I still made my own coffee every morning. From the outside, everything worked. But the way I was going through my day started to change. I stopped sitting down for lunch without really noticing. I'd stand at the counter, eat a few bites, then walk away before I was even full. Not because I had something better to do. I just didn't feel like finishing. Some days I ate late. Some days I forgot until mid-afternoon. By then I'd grab whatever was easiest, something quick, something that didn't require thinking. That became my rule without me saying it out loud. If it was easy, I ate it. If it took effort, I skipped it. And that rule started showing up in other places. I wasn't rushing. I wasn't in pain. I just kept choosing the easier option over and over. Leave the spoon for later. Step around the mail on the floor. Sit down a little sooner than I used to. Each decision felt small, almost reasonable, but put together they changed how my day felt. By early afternoon, I'd feel this drop in energy. Not a crash, just a slow fade, like something was missing, but I couldn't quite name it. So I'd sit more, and the more I sat, the less I wanted to get up. It didn't feel like I was getting weaker. That would have been obvious. This felt quieter than that. It felt like everything was just becoming a little more difficult than it needed to be. And the strange part was I wasn't doing anything wrong on purpose. I just stopped doing the things that required a little more effort, especially when it came to food. I looked at that remote again and stayed where I was. Not tired, not in pain, just unwilling. And that's when it hit me. Nothing about this felt like my body giving out. It felt like I had been making things harder on myself for a while, and I didn't notice when it started. I walked over, picked it up, and stood there longer than I needed to, because now I was thinking, if this was just normal aging, then why did it feel so avoidable? I didn't like that question. So I did what most people do. I tried to fix it the modern way. I bought a few things from the store that claimed to help with energy. Drinks, supplements, things with words like boost and support on the label. I gave it a fair shot. Nothing really changed. I wasn't worse, but I wasn't better either. That's when I stopped looking for something new. Instead, I started thinking about something old. My mother never talked about nutrition. She didn't read labels. She didn't count anything. But she had a way of eating that didn't change much. Same kind of meals, same times, same routine. Back then, I thought it was boring. Now, standing in my kitchen at 94, I realized something I hadn't noticed before. She never stood in front of the fridge wondering what to eat. She already knew. And for the first time in a long while, I started to wonder if the problem wasn't what I was eating, but the fact that I had to figure it out every single day. I pulled out a pot that had been sitting in the back of the cabinet for years. Nothing special about it, just something I used to use more often. That Sunday I made a simple pot of beans. No recipe, just what I remembered. Beans, a few vegetables, a little salt. The kind of meal that doesn't try to impress anyone. I didn't expect anything from it. The first few days I didn't even follow through perfectly. One day I ate it. The next day I went back to something quick. Old habits don't leave just because you made one good decision. But I kept coming back to that pot. By the end of the week, something had changed, not in my body yet, but in my day. I didn't have to stand in front of the fridge anymore. Around the same time every day, I'd heat up a small bowl. After warming it, I'd add a little olive oil on top. Nothing fancy, just enough to make it taste like real food. On the counter, I kept a jar of walnuts. Easy to grab, no thinking. Sometimes I added greens. Not because I loved them, but because they were there. That was it. No plan, no chart, no decisions. And that turned out to be the most important part. The first week, I didn't feel stronger. I just didn't feel as off in the afternoon. That usual drop I had gotten used to, it didn't hit as hard. By the second week, I noticed I wasn't sitting down as quickly after lunch. Not because I was trying to be active. I just didn't feel the need to stop. It wasn't a big change. If you looked at me, you wouldn't notice anything different. But I could feel it. Things weren't easier. They were just not as hard. And that was enough to keep going. I didn't notice the change all at once. It showed up in small ways. I started picking things up right when they fell. I didn't stand there thinking about it anymore. I just did it. And that's when I understood something I wish someone had told me years ago. At my age, it's not the big things that take you down. It's the small decisions you make every day without thinking, especially around food. When every meal is different, every choice takes a little energy. And when you don't have much energy to begin with, those little decisions start adding up. That's how things slowly get harder. Not because your body suddenly fails, but because you stop giving it something steady to work with. I didn't fix everything in my life. I didn't suddenly become healthy. I just stopped guessing what to eat every day. And that changed more than I expected. So if you're listening to me right now, I'll tell you this as simply as I can. Don't wait until things feel difficult to look at how you're living. Don't turn every meal into a question. And don't assume feeling weak is just something you have to accept. You don't need a perfect plan. You need something simple enough that you'll still follow it on a day when you don't feel like doing anything. Because those are the days that matter. And if there's one thing I've learned at 94, it's this. Your body doesn't ask for much. It just needs you to stop making things harder than they already are. I kept my meals simple the next day without overthinking it. Same bowl, same time. No debate in my head. And that's when the lesson became clear in a way I couldn't ignore anymore. What made my life harder wasn't just what I was eating. It was the fact that I had to decide it every single day. Nobody talks about that part. When you're younger, you can get away with it. You skip meals, grab something quick, eat at random times. It doesn't seem to matter. Your body keeps up, but that doesn't last forever. At some point, all those small decisions start costing you more than you think. Not all at once. Not in a way that scares you. Just enough to make everything feel a little heavier. That was my mistake. I thought I needed better food. What I really needed was fewer decisions. I didn't need variety. I needed something I could repeat without thinking. And once I saw that, I couldn't unsee it. So let me say this as plainly as I can. If you're tired more often than you used to be, if simple things feel harder than they should, if you find yourself standing in the kitchen not knowing what to eat, don't assume it's just age. Take a closer look at how you're eating every day. Because what I learned, too late if I'm being honest, is this. Your energy doesn't just come from food. It comes from how predictable your life is around it. I kept the same lunch the next week without trying to improve it. No upgrades, no new plan. Just the same pot, the same bowl around the same time. And that's where this started to work in real life. Not because it was perfect, but because it was predictable. There were still days I didn't feel like eating it. Some afternoons I wanted something different. A couple of times I went back to old habits just because it was easier. Nothing dramatic happened when I did that. But I noticed the difference the next day. I felt a little more off, a little slower to get moving. Not worse, just not as steady. And that made things clearer than any advice ever could. This wasn't about finding the best food. It was about removing the daily guesswork. Once I stopped asking myself, what should I eat today? Something else changed too. I stopped delaying things. After lunch, I stayed on my feet a little longer, not on purpose. I just didn't feel that quiet drop that used to pull me into a chair. That gave me a small window of momentum. I used it without thinking. Wash a dish. Wipe the counter. Walk to the mailbox instead of putting it off. Again, nothing impressive, but it added up. And that's the part most people miss. You don't need more energy to start doing things. You need fewer moments where your energy gets drained before you even begin. For me, those moments were in the kitchen. Too many choices, too many small decisions. So I removed them. One simple meal, same time, no thinking. And it didn't make my life exciting. It just made it easier to keep moving. I set the bowl down in front of you and slide the jar of walnuts a little closer. Nothing fancy, just what I eat. And if you ask me what really changed things, I wouldn't start talking about healthy food. I'd tell you this instead: stop turning every meal into a decision, because that's where most people lose more energy than they realize. You think it's about what's on the plate. It's not. It's about what happens before the plate even gets there. Standing in the kitchen, opening the fridge, thinking too long. That's where it starts. So here's what I would tell you, plain and simple. Don't eat in a different way every single day and expect your body to keep up. Don't replace real meals with snacks just because it's easier. And don't tell yourself you'll figure it out tomorrow. That tomorrow turns into a habit faster than you think. At my age, I've learned that most things that keep you going aren't complicated. They're just consistent. The problem is consistency looks boring, so people ignore it. They go looking for something better, something new, something more interesting. I did that too. And all it did was make everything a little harder than it needed to be. What actually works is simple enough that you can follow it on a day when you don't feel like trying. Because those are the days that decide how your life goes. And if you sat here long enough, I'd probably tell you one more thing. Most of what matters doesn't feel important when you're still strong. It only starts to make sense when things get just hard enough that you finally pay attention.